Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Nick Blumberg. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Here's what we're looking at. A stomach bug is causing issues across the country, including in Illinois. What to know about the outbreak and how to stay healthy. The pace of police reform under Superintendent Larry Snelling.
I want Chicago to be a place where families can build their future again.
Mayoral candidate and entrepreneur Joe Holberg joins us to talk about his campaign for the city's top job. First off tonight, a nationwide halt on ICE agents making most traffic stops. That's the reporting from multiple outlets, and it comes on the heels of federal immigration agents fatally shooting 2 people over the last week, one in Maine and one in Houston, Texas. Those deaths have heaped further scrutiny on the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. In September of last year, an ICE agent shot and killed Silverio Villegas Gonzalez during a traffic stop in Franklin Park. And in October, a Border Patrol agent shot and wounded Marimar Martinez while she was in her vehicle in Brighton Park, with body cam footage later contradicting agents' accounts of the incident. ICE declined to comment on the change in traffic stop policy. A federal trade fraud task force reaches a milestone. The task force, whose lead prosecutorial partner is Chicago's U.S. Attorney's Office, announced today it's hit $1 billion in recoveries and penalties over the past year. Officials say they reached the $1 billion mark thanks to charges against a gold jewelry import and wholesale company. The Trade Fraud Task Force operates across the country and is aimed at people trying to skirt customs laws and smugglers bringing banned goods into the U.S. Northwestern Medicine celebrates a major organ transplant achievement. 36-year-old Iowa resident Elizabeth Worley is set to return home this week after undergoing a quadruple organ transplant in March: 2 lungs, a liver, and a kidney. That quadruple transplant is the first known of its kind in the U.S. Worley applauded the medical team that got her through the surgery and recovery and highlighted the importance and impact of organ donation, thanking her donor's family.
During one of the hardest moments of their lives, they made a decision. They gave me another chance at mine. Because of their selfless gift, I get to go home this week, hug my 11-year-old son Landon, and continue living a life I wasn't sure I'd get to have. I will never stop being grateful for that.
Up next, how to stay safe from a severe stomach bug that's going around. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Public health officials across the country are working to identify the cause of an outbreak of cyclosporiasis. The parasitic infection is hitting more than half the states in the U.S., including Illinois, harder than in previous years. The Illinois Department of Public Health says that as of today, they've identified over 200 probable cases of cyclosporiasis in the state. Joining us now with more on the outbreak and what you can do is Dr. Emily Landon, Executive Medical Director for Infection Prevention and Control at UChicago Medicine. Dr. Landon, welcome back to the program. I'd like to start off fairly simply just asking, what exactly is cyclosporiasis?
Well, Cyclosporia cayetanensis is actually a parasite pathogen. It's a microscopic, and it thrives in warm, wet weather, which is exactly what we've been seeing all over the Midwest recently. And it often contaminates foods, especially produce that's grown in the ground, where it can come from animal feces or contamination from other water sources. And then those foods, when people ingest them, they can develop diarrhea that's pretty significant.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what are the main symptoms and how severe can those symptoms be?
So I think a lot of people have been hearing a lot of things on social media about explosive diarrhea, and that's not wrong. There is a lot of watery diarrhea involved in cyclosporiasis, and patients can unfortunately continue to have those symptoms sort of off and on. We call it remitting and relapsing. So they come and go for upwards of almost 2 months without treatment. Now, there aren't a lot of other major problems. There's some cramping, bloating, just abdominal discomfort. Sometimes people are a little nauseated, but most patients just have those symptoms, which are bad and disruptive to your life, but they're usually not life-threatening. Some people do get such bad diarrhea, especially if you have other medical problems, you're very young or very old, that might land you in the hospital getting fluids for dehydration. But the vast majority of people will recover from this infection on their own.
You mentioned the potential sources of this parasite. How can people avoid contracting this infection?
Yeah, what a tricky situation. So there are cases of cyclosporiasis every summer all over the country. And you can get it when you're traveling abroad in places where the weather is warm and wet and you eat produce. And it's also, there seems to be a much bigger than usual number of cases this year. Now, the CDC is reporting, and some state health departments are reporting, an outbreak that's probably all the cases are related, that is taking place in Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. That's what they've decided today. But there are excess cases in a lot of states. In total, I think there are more than 30 states reporting cases and more than 5,000 cases under investigation by the CDC. And Illinois has a much higher case count, I think 216 as of today, much higher than we would usually see it this year. But we really don't know exactly what's causing it. Usually by this time, we would know that it's a contamination of produce, like some maybe lettuce in a bag or some berries. That's what usually happens with these foodborne outbreaks. But this one has been particularly difficult to pin down, and it's been hard to know exactly what to avoid. So the question about how to prevent it is a little trickier. It's the time of year when fresh produce is at its tastiest and its freshest. And so I really am loath to tell people not to eat any fruits and vegetables. That would be a bad idea. So I think there are some things that people can do to reduce the risk. So the leafy greens that come in bags or containers where they're just leaves or where they've already been chopped, that's riskier than a whole head of lettuce. So if you want to make a salad, I would recommend buying a whole head of lettuce and being able to peel off those outer leaves and throw them away, and then washing the rest of the leaves. That's going to help reduce your risk. When it comes to berries, which are my favorite thing to eat at this time of year, there's not a lot that can be done. I would just recommend washing them as best you can. Those things that are on the market to sort of spray on vegetables and fruits in order to clean them, those are not going to be effective at killing cyclosporiasis. So if you're going to eat those raspberries, you're taking a little bit of a risk. But so far, we don't know if the raspberries are the cause or not. So I think you have to make your own judgment. In short, if you're eating fruits and vegetables, you can cook them. That will really help reduce the risk. Cooking to 158 degrees Fahrenheit will kill the parasite. And then the other option is to wash them really well, but water doesn't always work on its own, and some things are really hard to clean. So a cucumber can be scrubbed when you're cleaning it. That's going to be a really good intervention to do. But anything that can be peeled, that's a great choice too. But I think some things are a little riskier, and I would put berries, leaves of green leaves like what you'd find in lettuce, or honestly, in the past, there's been issues with cilantro or basil, which is also one of my favorite things at this time of year. So I'm really unhappy with these recommendations.
Understandably so. Last summer, the CDC quietly scaled back a federal-state partnership that monitors foodborne illnesses and no longer requires monitoring for several pathogens, including cyclospora. Is the federal government falling asleep at the wheel here?
Now, that's a loaded question. I happen to think that scaling back the protections that we have in food safety and a number of the other public health interventions that we've been doing for years is a problem. And honestly, I think that's probably contributing to why we don't have a source for this outbreak. But there are other things about cyclospora that make it trickier and more difficult to track than other foodborne illnesses, like things you've heard of in the past, like E. coli 0157H7 and things like that. They're easier to grow. People get sick faster. The incubation time for cyclosporiasis can be up to 2 weeks. And so it's really hard if somebody doesn't really come, like if it takes a week or so for you to realize that this is not going away and come to attention and go to your doctor and get a test. Then we're asking you to look back and tell us what you ate 3 weeks ago. It can be really hard to remember what you ate yesterday. So it can be pretty tricky to track down the cause of these outbreaks.
You mentioned some of the numbers here. As you said, 216 probable cases at last count in Illinois, 47 of those reported in Chicago. Are you concerned this outbreak could become significantly larger?
Oh, it probably already is significantly larger. Cyclosporiasis, because the symptoms are, they're relatively mild, they're not going to put you in the hospital for most people. A lot of people don't ever get tested or don't ever come to attention. In fact, some people may be going to their doctor with symptoms of diarrhea, and their doctor just says, oh, maybe it's this cyclospora, we'll give you some Bactrim now and see how you do, without ever getting a test. And so a lot of cases are never getting reported. There are probably lots and lots more cases than what we're seeing actually hitting the numbers in the health department. So probably a lot more people are sick than we think. And I think it is already a pretty big outbreak. Now, granted, even the 5,000 additional, I think CDC is saying today like 1,500, 1,600 cases confirmed and another 5,000 they're looking into. Even those numbers, they may seem like a lot, but for the whole country, that's not a ton of people. But there are probably a lot more cases that are not coming to people's attention. And so I think if you're having symptoms like watery diarrhea, cramping, bloating, abdominal pain, it's reasonable to go to your doctor. We do have treatments for this. If you can take sulfa drugs, then we can probably reduce your suffering quite a bit.
Certainly a noble goal in an instance like this. All right, Dr. Emily Landon, thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and good luck.
Thank you, likewise. Up next, how a federal court order fared under Police Superintendent Larry Snelling's leadership. By the time Superintendent Larry Snelling retires tomorrow, the Chicago Police Department will have fully completed just a quarter of the consent decree. That's the federal court order that requires CPD to stop routinely violating Black and Latino residents' constitutional rights. So it'll be up to Chicago's next top cop to complete the hundreds of tasks laid out by the court order while making sure the changes stick. Our Heather Sharon joins us now for a look at Snelling's record on the consent decree and what awaits his successor. So Heather, when Superintendent Snelling took over the police department, it had fully complied with just 6% of the consent decree. What changed during his tenure?
Well, as Mayor Brandon Johnson often told reporters, Superintendent Snelling made more progress in his about 3 years on the job than any of the other superintendents that have led the department since 2019. But the bulk of that progress came at the first two levels of consent decree compliance. They have written most of the policies as required by the consent decree, and they have trained some of the officers on those policies. But that final level of compliance, full compliance, has proved elusive, and that will be at the top of the list of things to do for whoever gets to be Chicago's next police superintendent.
I imagine a lot of people will be asking questions about that. So your reporting found sort of a split on whether Superintendent Snelling deserves credit for increased compliance or blame for the fact that there hasn't been any more progress made. What did you hear?
Well, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Rule told me that he thought that progress was really due to Superintendent Snelling's decision to lean into the consent decree. He didn't delegate responsibility for those tasks to any of his command staff, and he appeared at monthly hearings held by the federal judge who is keeping tabs on the reform effort. But if you ask members of the coalition which sued the city to force it to agree to this federal court oversight, they say Snelling did a great public relations job in convincing the mayor, the judge, and other people that he was committed to reforms without making the significant changes in the department's culture that the consent decree requires.
Interesting split in opinion. All right, obviously the search is on for his successor. What will be at the top of the to-do list for whoever the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability and finally the mayor choose to replace Superintendent Snelling?
Well, whoever takes over the department will have a roadmap on some of the core tasks set out by the consent decree, including expanding real community policing citywide and making sure officers are deployed where they need to be to address violent crime and other issues. But they're going to have to sort of make some hard decisions on how to implement those plans. They're also going to have to figure out whether Chicago police officers should be banned from making pretextual traffic stops. Oh, and they're dealing with enforcement actions by that same coalition that says the increasing number of times officers are using force against members of the public violates the decree in total.
And we know you will be keeping an eye on all of that. Heather Sharon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news.
WTTW News coverage of policing and police reform is supported by the Joyce Foundation.
Chicagoans have less than a year before they cast their ballots for the city's next mayor, and the competition is heating up as 7 candidates so far have announced their bids. Entrepreneur Joe Holberg was the first to enter the race back in October. The Michigan-born businessman says he's ready to fight for safer neighborhoods, affordable housing, and economic growth. And Joe Holberg joins us now to discuss his campaign. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So you say that you're not a politician, much like the last 2 folks elected as well, who had limited experience in public office. What do you see as your qualifications to go all the way to the top and lead the city?
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, I was a teacher on the West Side and got 3 years of academic growth for my students, many of whom went to some of the best high schools across the city. I've worked in nonprofit. I've worked at large companies, and I even started a company and created jobs in Chicago. And I think that fresh perspective and that diversity of experiences will lend itself very well to being the next mayor.
You know, the field of moderate candidates is already a somewhat crowded one, including several with name recognition. How do you hope to distinguish yourself in the field?
Yeah, I think one of the big things we focus on is solving real problems for hardworking people. One of those big problems in this city is our desperate need to create more affordability through building housing. My plan is to build 100,000 new units of housing so we can drop the cost for renters and homeowners alike, so that we can continue to be an affordable, amazing city for people to grow, for people to live, and for them to raise their families.
What's the path forward for getting those 100,000 new units online?
It's an all-of-the-above approach. We need private investment, which is currently choked off because of the current administration's hostility towards growth and development. We need subsidized housing. We need to use our 10,000 vacant lots as a starting place. Why we don't do anything with those baffles me, and it's actually really exciting as an opportunity because it allows you to grow a neighborhood, create jobs, and bring affordability into every person's life across the 77 neighborhoods. So
you were able to lend your campaign $350,000, blowing the contribution caps. For folks who aren't familiar with you, can you tell us about the business career you had that put you in that financial position?
Absolutely. For starters, I grew up in rural Michigan in a low-income household. We were on food stamps. I was a first-generation college student, and I actually ran out of money and almost had to drop out of school, and I was homeless and I slept in my car. I came to Chicago for a job and an opportunity to make a life, and by serving and putting other people first, I was able to start a business, grow it, create jobs across the city, and serve tens of thousands of people. And eventually that company was acquired, which was a life-changing opportunity. And to me, the best thing I can do with the opportunities and the resources that I've worked really hard for is to continue to put other people first, serve them, and make sure they have opportunities to grow in their lives, just like I have in Chicago.
The city's most recent financial forecast projects a $1.16 billion budget cap next year. Chicago, of course, has a long-standing structural deficit, underfunded pensions. What are your specific proposals to improve the city's financial health?
Well, first and foremost, I think we should buy the parking meters back. that represents an opportunity for us not only to control our streets and our infrastructure, but it represents an opportunity for us to rethink how we could actually generate money for the city rather than seeing that flow out of the city. Additionally, we've been given reports by various financial firms and experts highlighting over 100 ways where we could save $500 million to $1 billion. And lastly, by building homes, if every one of those had $3,000 in new property taxes, we could generate $300 million in additional property tax revenue. And that's not including all of the cascading effects from the jobs and the economic activity of building the houses themselves. So it's multiple things that's going to lead us to a solution. But I think we have the knowledge, the skills, and we have the experience and expertise in the city. And we need to bring everyone to the table to do just that.
I want to come back to the issue of parking meters, because that could come with a $3 billion or so price tag.
Yeah.
Is that something Chicago taxpayers can afford?
I think it's a great opportunity for us to partner with the state to think innovatively and differently than we have in the past. And I've actually outlined a plan where we could add new features and value to the parking meter system to make it more affordable and more usable for everyone, while still focusing on turning it into a revenue generating asset, again, for the city, rather than having that money flow out into Stone Peak or whoever else that may be.
What would be the right structure for financing a buyback like that? Are we looking at a bond issue? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are opportunities. Bond issuance is one of them. There have been other ideas floated about public-private trust. There are other financial mechanisms and tools that could be considered. And this is one of the beautiful things about collaborating rather than closing your door and throwing away the key, is if you go out and you seek to learn and partner, you can come up with new and innovative ideas that I don't think we've explored fully yet because of the secrecy, the deception, and the lack of transparency from the current administration as it relates to the parking meters.
One of the elements of your school's platform is to have open and supportive conversations about the future of each of our schools with communities and stakeholders. Would you consider, supporting the idea of perhaps closing some Chicago public schools?
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful opportunity to figure out what communities are asking for. I've spent my entire life listening to and responding to people to try to serve them. We need to go into communities and say, what do you need, what do you want, and what do you envision for your families in your community? And through those conversations, we can have challenging conversations that ultimately lead to a path forward, such as having a smaller building but still having a school, right? The aging infrastructure is costing us millions, tens of millions of dollars a year. A school is a collection of people. It's not always just a building. And so those types of ideas could be solutions to helping communities navigate both through growth and when they're declining in terms of student population.
You've also called for making the CTA system safer. According to recent Chicago Police Department data, serious crime on the system is down sharply. Do you think the current efforts don't go far enough?
I think what we need to do is focus on making CTA safe, clean, and reliable. And in those three respects, we have a long way to go. Data showing reductions in crime, that's obviously a benefit, but I ride the CTA every single day, and I have for over a decade. And when I get on the train and I see things that we don't want to say on air, and other people are saying the same things to us, we can see reductions in data, but if the system as a whole is not improving in terms of cleanliness, safety, and reliability, there's a significant gap between the data and the lived experience of riders, the 1 million riders that use it every day, including myself.
We've got just about 30 seconds left, but Mayor Johnson has had a somewhat contentious relationship with City Council. Should you be elected, how would you work to improve the relationship with alderpeople?
Well, I think one of the most exciting things about working with and collaborating with City Council is this idea that across the city, no matter what neighborhood you're in, we need more housing. We need to fix the issues with our budget, and we need to grow our city so it's more vibrant and healthy for everyone. Those, to me, are the starting place, and those can be the North Star in collaborating and getting the job done, which is exactly why we need a different perspective on the 5th floor.
All right, Joe Holberg, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And additional candidates running for mayor have also been joining us on Chicago Tonight, with more coming in the weeks ahead. You can visit our website to find those interviews at WTTW.com/mayor2027. And that's our show for this Tuesday night. Explore the natural world around you by signing up for our free email newsletter, Urban Nature. That's at WTTW.com/newsletter. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm working to preserve the dignity and rights of all individuals.